Hello everyone, welcome to our training on incident reports. What we're going to do today includes going over the incident report forms and how to fill them out, the timelines for when you need to report an incident and what types of incidents you need to report to management, and when you need to fill out the written reports and get them in to your manager that you reported it to. So, the general incident report form starts with the top part here, has three separate items that you can choose from: initial report, supplemental report, or amended report. Now, it's almost always going to be an initial report unless an initial incident causes further additional incidents to occur, or you're asked to do a follow-up report on something following up on the initial incident. But the best example I can give for when you might do a supplemental report is a few weeks ago we had flooding on the third floor of the shelter. And the flooding on the third floor of the shelter caused damage to 2 participant rooms on the second floor because of the ceiling tiles falling down. So the initial incident is the initial flooding. That's the initial report. And then each of the 2 rooms where the tiles fell down, each of those is a supplemental report. But the vast majority of the time, you're going to select initial report. Now, down here in the general information section, you're going to ignore report number. That is something that I will fill in when I actually log the report into our system. And then under person submitting incident report, you'll write your first and last names. If there were any other staff, volunteers, or interns who witnessed the incident, if different from the person filing the report listed above, you'll put their first and last names in this section here. And then for the participant numbers of individuals involved in the incident or who witnessed the incident, if you work at the thrift store or if the people involved in the incident were just visitors who have no official affiliation with Hubbard House, you can just put their names here instead of a participant number. But for participants, of course, we will always use the program participant number instead of the name. And I want to clarify here, because I've been getting a couple of reports lately that have this error in it. If the parent is not directly involved in an incident involving the child, but rather is simply a witness to the incident, you do not put the parent's name, or participant number, rather, under the program participant file numbers of individuals involved in the incident. That would go below here in the individuals who witnessed the incident. If the mother's only involvement is reporting the incident to you, that's more of a witness than involved in. Now, of course, if the mother was actually part of the incident with the child, that's different. But if the mother simply witnessed the incident or noticed an injury or the child told her or him about it firsthand, then you will not put them in the involved section. They will go down as witness, or if they didn't even witness it, you don't even need to put them there. You can just put in the narrative that the child told the parent that this happened, or the parent saw an injury and reported it after the fact. Okay? So then below here we've got yes/no questions for whether law enforcement, emergency, fire, and medical services, DCF hotline, or other agencies were notified. And, you know, if the answer is yes, then there's some more information it asks for over here. So case number, if law enforcement was notified, an operator, number if DCF hotline was notified, and if other agencies were notified, then you need to specify which agency. In Section 2, the reporting date and date of incident and time of incident are required, and make sure you circle whether it was AM or PM. That's very important because I cannot log the incident without this information. Location where incident occurred, you do not need to be overly descriptive here. It can be third floor training room at shelter. It can be shelter participant room 224, which I don't think is an actual real room number, but it can be second floor kitchen B. Or it can be outreach center hallway, outreach center intake room, or something like that, or outreach center lobby, thrift store entrance, thrift store whichever section, electronics section, for example. Okay, it does not have to be super descriptive, but it does have to be specific. Then type of incident, we have employee-related, participant-related, and if you check participant-related, then you have to further check whether it's a child or an adult, and then facility-related. Now, I do realize this does not really account for thrift store customers. So if it's a thrift store customer, just write it in at the bottom here, okay? And then brief description of the incident. This is one people really are putting far too much information in. I've got an incident report in front of me right now where the brief description of the incident says that the participant fell and bumped their bottom lip. We don't need that much information in the brief description. All it needs to say is participant injury, staff injury, participant illness, staff illness, fire alarm, burst pipe or flooding. 1 to 2 words max. It does not need to have more than 2 words in it. If you have more than 2 words, you're putting too much information, okay? Because like really it only needs a couple of words. The details come below in the summary of events. Describe the incident in detail, including the location of the incident, and that's where you'll get specific about where it happened. And please use only factual information in this section. If the incident involves participants, use unique IDs only in this section. Staff members' names should be used first and last, as well as volunteers' names or interns or thrift store customers' names. But participants, because their data is confidential, we only use the participant numbers. For everyone else, we can use full names. And so in addition to including the location of the incident, if there is an injury, I want you to make sure you're including what part of the body was injured. So let's say a child injured her right forefinger opening a soda can, or a participant burnt left hand taking food out of the oven. Okay, I want it to be specific. Staff member tripped and twisted right ankle. I want you to be specific about what part of the body was injured, and as well as not just the what the incident was and what happened, but on the next page, the follow-up, what you provided in response to the incident. So, but for the summary of incident, a really good example of a summary that's an easy one, and they're my favorite ones because they're the easiest, are ones when a participant is feeling ill and comes downstairs and asks us to call an ambulance for them. Participant XYZ came downstairs or sent somebody downstairs to request staff to call an ambulance because they were experiencing chest pain or nausea or stomach pain or possible labor contractions, right? Staff called 911 and followed the directions of the operator and stayed with the participant until paramedics arrived. And then on the next page, you'll put, you know, did the participant opt to go with the paramedics to the hospital? Did the participant request a taxi to go to the hospital without taking the ambulance there, but still needing hospital assistance? Or did the participant opt not to go to the hospital at all? So, and really, that's the type of information we need. And for injuries, whenever there's an injury, we also want you to put if first aid was provided. So provided first aid, including a Band-Aid or an ice pack, something like that, in this section here. So it says indicate all corrective actions planned or taken or any follow-up actions planned or taken along with date of action where applicable. Obviously, if it happened the same day, you'll just put it in here normally. Participant opted not to go to the hospital by ambulance and requested a taxi. Staff phoned for a taxi, and the participant went to the hospital by taxi. And that's it. That's your follow-up. Now, if there's anything else required, then it would be a bit more in-depth. So for an injury, for example, staff provided first aid and notified the child's parent if it's a child injury, and asked the parent if the parent wanted transportation for medical assistance, and if so, provided that transportation. And then center follow-up is a follow-up report being prepared for submission to FCADV. If this is not an FCADV reportable incident, which we will go over what those are, you can just go ahead and check no. Because obviously if it's not FCADV reportable, you don't need to report it to submit it to FCADV. Then down here, section 5, we need your first and last name, your title or position, and a phone number to call you. Now, if you're a resident advocate, you can just put the hotline number in that place. Then name of supervisor, supervisor's title, and supervisor's phone number. And if you're not sure what that is, you can always check the phone list or the contacts in the telephone system if you're based at the shelter. Or you can also look at their emails that you've received from them to see if they have that information in the signature of their emails. And then managers will do this. So when you report an incident to a manager, it can be your manager if your manager just is actually here when it happens, or it can be the on-call manager. But let's say you injured yourself. You tripped and twisted your ankle. And the only manager here in the building where you are is somebody who is not your manager and not part of your program at all. You can still report the incident to that manager. You'll put your supervisor in the section 5, but when you report it to a manager, even if it's not your manager, you submit the incident report to the manager you reported it to, and that manager is the one responsible for signing the report. So, for example, one day I hit my hand on the corner of a desk, and my manager was gone. All the direct service managers just about were gone, but Vanessa just happened to be here, and her office is right next to mine. So I'm like, Vanessa, you are a manager. This happened, and I'm going to give you the incident report after I write it up. Okay. And then that manager, if it's a staff injury, will report it to Carol, or you can report it directly if they want you to do that. And then, so you'll give the incident report to the manager that you initially reported it to, and they will sign it here. Then they will pass it on to me. I will log the incident report. The exception to that, though, is if your manager is LaShonda, instead of giving the incident report to LaShonda, give it to me first. I will log it, and I will give it to LaShonda. So after I log the incident report, I pass it on to LaShonda. If it involves staff, she'll pass it on to Carol. And then Carol will pass it on to Gail. If it does not involve staff, then it'll just go directly to Gail. The procedure is right here, and you can find this combined form and procedure on the company share drive in the forms folder. And also you can find the form and procedure separately on the Survivor Services drive in the forms folder and the procedures folder, respectively. So the immediate incident response, of course, if it's an injury, the first thing you want to do is assess the injuries to determine if medical attention is required, and if it involves a child, notify the child's parent by contacting them by phone or in person, paging them if you're in shelter. If medical attention is required, administer any appropriate first aid, gather information from witnesses if there are any, and then after you've immediately responded to the injury or other type of incident, then you'll notify your supervisor or the on-call manager or the supervisor's designee, and then document the incident report on the incident report form. If it's a staff member, and I know that some of this is injury specific, but a lot of times we have reports due to illness as well, so you can just ignore the injury part. But if it's an illness, you'll still need to determine if medical attention is required. Administer appropriate first aid, gather information from witnesses, notify supervisor or designee. The supervisor or designee will notify the chief financial officer, and then document the incident using the incident report documentation instructions in this policy. Now, a lot of minor incidents occur that people do not think are reportable, or don't think, oh, I should report that when it happens, like hitting your hand on the corner of a desk. But I really, and management as well, we prefer to err on the side of caution. And if you have an injury, however minor, as long as it's not like just a paper cut, err on the side of reporting it rather than not reporting it, because on at least 2 occasions that I know of, resident assistants or advocates have injured their hands in the course, or wrists in the course of normal job duties, and only realized a day or 2 later that they had actually fractured the bones. And that's why it's really, really important to report it, even if you think it's minor, because we have had 2 fractures that the staff thought were minor injuries when they first happened. Same thing with one of the child injuries I did a report on back when I was still an RA. we had a child who was running down the hallway and slipped and fell. And, of course, I witnessed it and reported it right away. But his mother didn't take him to the hospital at that time, didn't think it was that serious. The next day, it was still giving him a lot of pain. She took him to their regular doctor. And, by the way, you don't always have to offer a taxi to the hospital. You can offer it to their regular doctor's office or an urgent care center instead of the hospital, which is often cheaper for that person. So anyway, his mother took him to his regular doctor's office the next day, and he had broken his arm. So it's really important to document what you think might just be minor injuries, because they might turn out to be more serious than they are. Okay, so you need to report the incident verbally to the supervisor or the on-call manager within an hour of the incident happening. If you are not able to do it, have somebody else who was there, who witnessed it alongside you, make that call. Let's say you're still responding to the incident, have another coworker call the manager to let them know about it. That includes calling the on-call manager at 4 a.m. if necessary, which I have done, within 1 hour of the incident occurring. Okay, and then the incident reports as written need to be turned in within 5 hours of the incident occurring, or if the incident occurs after hours, it has to be turned in by no later than 9 a.m. the following workday morning to the supervisor or on-call manager to whom the incident was initially reported. And then if your direct service, of course, direct supervisor is the COO, you'll just submit the written report to me, and then I'll submit it to her. The report will then be logged. I'll assign it a number. I'll scan it in as well because, just in case there are corrections requested, I want to make sure we've got a copy of it before it's sent back for corrections, and turn it into LaShonda. And the internal incident report document summary log actually includes who I forwarded it to and when, so that there's a chain of custody recorded for that. So after reviewing and signing the incident report, the responding supervisor or on-call manager will forward it to me within 1 business day. And then I'll write down the date received. I'll review the report for any needed corrections, log it electronically. Sorry about that. And then I'll assign it the report number. Now, if there are corrections needed, I will return the incident report to the supervisor with a request for necessary corrections. The majority of the time when I'm returning it for corrections, I'm asking for more information. So, like, oh, the child got injured, but where did the child get injured? Was it their right hand, their left hand, their right knee, their left knee? What did staff do to follow up on that? Did you call the child's parents down? Did you offer transportation for medical assistance? Did you provide first aid? That's the sort of thing I'll usually send back corrections for, is when it doesn't have enough information. And it needs that information. And then the supervisor will get the staff member who submitted the incident report to make corrections and resubmit it to me. And the corrections must be returned by the close of business the following business day, regardless of the work schedule of the staff member who submitted the report. So if it's somebody who only works Saturdays and Sundays, but the report needs to be corrected by Tuesday, then it still needs to be corrected by that day. It doesn't matter that the staff member only works Saturday and Sunday. The corrections, you have one business day to get the corrections made and turned back into me. And if no corrections are needed, then I'll forward it to LaShonda. LaShonda will forward it, review it, and forward it to Gail. Or if it involves a staff member, she'll forward it to Carol. And then once Gail has reviewed it and signed it, it'll come back to me, and I will file the report. Now, depending on the severity of an incident, the supervisor, COO, and CEO may elect, based on the issues and severity, to convene a more formal review with staff. That doesn't happen very often, but it could happen. And then they will evaluate the severity, take any follow-up actions needed, and then follow-up reports will be written when the follow-up actions and or investigations are substantive in nature, or if they're required by FCADV. And that's when you'll use the amended report or supplemental report options up at the top. FCADV reportable incidents. This is probably the most important part of this training today, because this is what FCADV are requiring us to train you for, and why you have to have it completed by the 18th. So, reportable FCADV incidents include the following: an altercation, which is any incident resulting in a serious injury that requires medical treatment by a licensed healthcare professional due to a physical altercation between two or more participants or their dependents, or between one or more participant, their dependent, an employee, or a volunteer. Okay, that's a serious injury resulting from an altercation that requires treatment by a licensed healthcare professional. So it's a high standard of requirements that you have to meet before it becomes an FCADV reportable incident. That has to be reported within 5 hours to FCADV. Closure of facility or outreach office has to be reported immediately. So obviously we'll report to them if we're closing outreach and or shelter due to a hurricane or other natural disaster. Or, for example, if the outreach center has to be closed due to flooding. Any act in which the facility must close for 5 hours or longer during its normal workday must be reported to FCADV right away. FCADV may assist with the coordination of relocation for residents to another center. For example, like a hurricane, or if the shelter gets flooded or something like that, or if there's a fire, which, you know, fingers crossed that won't happen, but if it does, we have to report it right away, and they can help rehouse the residents if necessary. For any shelter or outreach office closed for more than 72 hours, a service provision plan must be submitted on the closure of facility reporting form. The next one is communicable diseases, and this is also an immediate reporting situation. Any outbreak of a communicable disease in the shelter facility that requires a quarantine order or implementation of control procedures required by the state health officer or county health department. So let's say we have an outbreak of measles or TB. We would call the health department, and if they require quarantine or implementation of control procedures for that, then we would have to report that to FCADV straight away. And this one is the most important one, because this is the reason that we're doing this training today, the primary reason, death. And I know it's not a subject we want to talk about very often. It's not something that people are comfortable with, but we have to know what the requirements are, because it does not only refer to a participant in shelter dying in shelter, or a participant in shelter dying in the hospital, or any other way. It also includes outreach participants and their dependents, as well as shelter residents' dependents. So, any incident that involves the death of a participant or their dependent, which occurs while residing at the shelter facility or while receiving outreach services, or any incident that involves the death of an employee or a volunteer while working or while on Hubbard House property or working in other venue. Sorry, I copied this straight from FCADV, so this error is theirs. I apologize. So what this means for us, let's say we have a participant who comes to support group, and then after she leaves support group, later that day, she's in a car accident and dies in a car accident. This is something that has happened, and this is the reason we have this requirement. You need to tell your manager, and preferably also me. It doesn't say so in the procedure, but if it's a death report, if it's anything that requires immediate reporting, please let me know right away, because we need to make a phone call to FCADV to let them know. And the reason we have to do this training is because we had a death this past year that was a participant who was in a car accident after leaving a support group, and I didn't find out about it until a week after the advocate found out about it. And because there was a week lapse between when the advocate found out about the death and when it was reported to me, we got dinged in monitoring. And the only reason I found out about it was because I had called the advocate for something else with another question about something. And then we had another one not too long ago. It was the dependent of a participant, an outreach participant. And the definition of while receiving outreach services is if they've received services in the last 60 days, then we would consider them current. And so in this particular instance, it was the dependent who died of an illness while the participant was an active participant in an outreach program. And the advocate found out about it more or less straight away, but I didn't find out about it until afterwards by at least a week or two. And we may have another finding on our next monitoring because of that, because of the delay between the advocate finding out about it and me reporting it to FCADV, which I can only do when I know about it. But that's why even if you don't think it's necessarily reportable, if anybody dies in association with one of your program participants in shelter or outreach, please let me know as soon as possible. And, let your managers know as well, but if you can call me directly and let me know about it, I can call FCADV and get that process going and write that incident report and get that to them, where we hopefully will not have any more findings like that. Because even if you're not sure if it's reportable or not, if you're not sure, call me and ask, or call LaShonda, because we will always prefer to have a report we don't need over needing a report that we don't have. That is always preferable. And because death reports are immediate reporting, we literally have to call FCADV basically straight away after finding out about the death and gathering the information about it. The next one, embezzlement. So theft or larceny of Hubbard House assets, which includes money or property by any staff member or volunteer, So for those, generally it's going to be managers who make that call and contact FCADV about that. Media inquiry, that's an immediate reporting situation. So the difference between the immediate reporting and the other ones that are FCADV required is the immediate reporting is straight away. The other ones have a 5-hour time window that you can report it in. So you have more time to respond to it. So media inquiry is when there's any action by a program participant, their dependent, an employee, or a volunteer that results in an adverse or negative inquiry by public media, by the legislature, or by the office of the governor. So that has to be reported to FCADV immediately. Sexual battery. Any incident resulting in a participant alleging sexual battery, and you know I can get you a copy of the Florida statute on what constitutes sexual battery if you have a question about that, if you're not sure. So any incident resulting in a participant alleging sexual battery by another participant, an employee, or a volunteer while residing at the shelter facility or while receiving outreach services. Excuse me. And then serious injury or illness. Any incident resulting in a serious injury or illness that requires the response of law enforcement, emergency medical services, paramedics, or firefighters, and is a result of conditions at Hubbard House that pose a serious risk of imminent harm to the health or safety of participants, needs to meet that criteria. If the incident does not meet the above criteria, then it will still need to be reported, but on the Hubbard House General Incident Report Form instead of FCADV. If it's FCADV reportable, see the instructions in Section C3. And generally, I fill out most of the FCADV incidents myself, the FCADV reports for the incident reports myself. So I will be contacting anyone who notifies me of an FCADV reportable incident to gather more information so that I can provide the most accurate report possible for FCADV. And then that will be reviewed by LaShonda and Gail before being submitted to FCADV. Now, this reporting procedure does not replace the abuse, neglect, and exploitation reporting system for child abuse reporting and elder abuse reporting. So make sure to check the Emergency Management Manual for more information on those procedures. Now, for FCADV reporting instructions, I've got the report forms for these in a location that I and the managers have access to. And you can do the FCADV report, notify me or your manager within an hour of the incident. And then the supervisor or designee must verbally report all FCADV reportable incidents to the COO or designee ASAP and no longer than 3 hours from the time of the incident. And then the COO or designee will notify the CEO. And if you can't reach the COO or designee within 3 hours, contact the CEO directly. 5-hour notification guidelines, that's within normal business hours, but the immediate reportable incidents including the closure of facility or outreach office, communicable disease, death, or negative media inquiry. FCADV has additional numbers for that. There's an incident reporting line to contact after normal business hours. And for FCADV, that's after 5:30 p.m. rather than after 5 p.m. They are open until 5:30. Or by calling one of the following FCADV management staff members. And that information's in here. And then I will submit the incident reports generally unless I'm not in and the COO does it or Gail does it. to incident reporting at fcadv.org within the required time frame. And then also include contact information for an alternative staff member knowledgeable about the incident for follow-up. So let's say the report is from Amy, and I put my contact information as the primary contact information for follow-up, but for a secondary person, I would put Amy because she knows the most about the incident. And then there are 3 separate types of incident report forms that FCADV has that, again, normally it will just be me, LaShonda, or Gail working with these forms. We have the general incident reporting form, the death incident reporting form, or the closure of facility incident reporting form. So everything that's in that required FCADV reportable incident list other than deaths and closure of facility will just fall under general incident report. And then that has to be submitted to FCADV in the necessary time frame and definitely within 24 hours of the incident. And the FCADV Center, the Domestic Violence Center Death Incident Report applies to any program participant whose case has not been closed or to any staff member or volunteer. And for outreach purposes, that's if they've received services in the last 60 days, it's considered open. If they have not, it's considered closed. Technical support and assistance is available at FCADV by contacting our contract manager. And I usually make those calls, for example, for the one with the participant's dependent. I had to call FCADV to verify that we actually do have to report deaths of dependents of outreach participants, which they did verify is the case. So, and then, you know, I'll log the information and I'll file the report. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to contact me and ask me. And if you have an incident that you're not sure whether it's reportable or not, err on the side of reporting it. If it's not reportable, we'll say, that's okay, we don't need that report. But if it is, and we've got it, yay. It's always preferable to needing something we don't have. Because that has happened as well. So always report an incident, even if it's a minor child cutting their finger opening a soda can incident that gets reported.
Good morning, staff. James, please valid picture 424.
Sorry about that. And anything else, you can always call me or a manager to find out if something's reportable. Like, for example, I had a paper cut, and it was a, it was a bad paper cut. It was the kind of paper cut that requires a Band-Aid. And I asked Nelson, hey, if I have a paper cut, do I need to write an incident report? Not for a paper cut. When in doubt, ask. Because we would rather have you ask whether it's reportable than not have a report for something we need. So, again, if you have any questions, please contact me, contact a manager, and we'll be happy to help walk you through that. Okay? Thank you. And please don't forget to write in the date. Sorry. Write in the date on the top left corner of the sign-in sheet that will accompany the email with this training. In the box under the word date, and write in your name, your job title, and your signature on the sign-in sheet, and submit that to me by no later than 4 p.m. on Friday, January 18th. Now, if you are watching this after January 18th as part of new employee orientation, you can ignore the deadline, but For all staff who are watching this as a requirement of the FCADV monitoring corrective action plan, please make sure to get me your sign-in sheets by no later than 4 p.m. on Friday, January 18th, 2019, okay? Because I have to scan and upload all of them to FCADV. So 4 p.m. Friday, January 18th, I need your sign-in sheets turned in to me. You can scan it and email it. You can bring it in person, just as long as I get it by that time and date. Call me if you have any questions. I should be here at least until 5 p.m. today, and then, of course, I'll be here all day tomorrow as well. Thank you.